Daniel Harris is with us this morning to talk to us specifically about this. Daniel, the class of 92 got mentioned there by Graham Souness, and certainly by the end of their careers they had all become absolute legends. But when they joined the Manchester United setup, they weren't the ones who were actually setting the culture and driving things on.
No, not at all. And I mean, they talk about this quite a lot. And when you talk about you'll never win anything with kids, that famous Alan Hansen quotation, United didn't really. That 1996 double was won by Schmeichel, Keane and Cantona. And they had young players who were able to play around them to come in and do the necessary on occasion. Whereas what you see with United now, so if you look at it last night, for example, you've got Rashford and Martial, and they're basically expected to be the guys because there's not that much else going on. And if you look at what Graham Souness says, I mean, I by and large agree with it, but it's not the only pro forma for success. So if you look at Manchester City, they don't have any players like that really, might be, in my opinion, I suppose, probably why they lost to Liverpool in the Champions League last season and why they lost to United in the league when they could have won the league in a derby match, is that they don't have any bastards really. The kind of players who will stop a half that you could lose 1-0, will stop you losing it 3-0 when stuff starts to go wrong. They don't have, their personality tends to be only in their feet. That they play with some personality, but they don't have those kind of characters. So there are other ways of doing it because we're seeing that there are other ways of doing it. But I guess one of the differences between that City side and Guardiola's Barcelona side is Puyol, Busquets, like those kind, Eto'o, those kind of nasty bastards who, when things aren't going right, are able to do something about it. What we said about Pogba, though, is I actually felt like Pogba was one of the least culpable last night. In the first half, Pogba was more or less playing in a one-man midfield against Juventus's 3, and it's quite hard to see what Mourinho's plan was there because he played with Matic and Mata. Matic's legs are gone, if they were ever quite there in the first place. He was never a passer, so, I mean, in the end, the question is, what exactly does he do? And Mata is a luxury player, and certainly a luxury player in this United side. Have Mata in the team, then there really needs to, when you play someone half decent, you really need to have another runner in midfield. Obviously, he can come more into the game if the opposition are going to sit back, which is kind of what happened against Chelsea on Sunday. But otherwise, you're not going to be able to compete in a simple game of football against the best teams in Europe. So what you might say is, well, United aren't able to compete against the best midfielders in Europe anyway. But then if that's the case, you have to find a way. So Liverpool have got a way that works for them. Is what they have is they have 3, by and large, talentless at that level midfielders, but who have legs. So they've got Henderson, Wijnaldum and Milner, who are not going to outpass any of these good teams because they're not passers, but they can run them out of games and make everything difficult for them. But United didn't do that, and Juventus turned up Old Trafford, and basically there was a gap in the middle of the pitch about 30 yards wide where they were able to just calmly knock the ball to each other. And that is never going to work when you don't have a defence that has Terry and Carvalho in it, or Vidic and Ferdinand in it, or whoever it is. You need high-level defenders to be able to cede that amount of possession to a team with that level of attackers. So, and for Mourinho just to say, well, they're better than us, they've got better players than us, they do, but that's not the answer because management is finding a way to get around that, or at least competing. If you end up losing in the end, then you end up losing in the end, but you have to compete, and United didn't compete at all in the first half.
Yeah, we kind of had thought that maybe there'd been a little bit of change in recent weeks in terms of the quality of performance, that there was just a little bit of a sense of improvement coming over the last couple of weeks since the comeback against Newcastle, and the understanding at least that there was some attacking talent and flair and brio within the team. But that dissipated last night when they actually came up against a really quality opposition.
Yeah, because you're not going to get quite as much of the ball. So you can pick the attacking players, and he did that against Chelsea as well. He picked attacking players, but then in the first half, they didn't even try and play in a way that would enable them to exploit their strong point. And that was the case again against Juventus. And I said this the other day on the show, that the way that United are going to be able to try and get something out of this game is if they get stuck into Juventus immediately. Because if you allow a side like that to turn up at your ground and get into a groove, then it's going to be very hard to wrest it back from them, and particularly against a team that have proper centre-backs like they do. So, I mean, United did make them a bit uncomfortable in the second half, but they lacked the craft to produce a goal. And whereas at the beginning of the game, Juventus are not going to be sitting back. So finding a way of delivering a chance is going to be slightly easier because they're not going to be defending with 5 at the back or with defenders and midfielders in front of them. And it does seem like Mourinho keeps reverting to types. They'll pick a team that looks like it can attack, then he'll not attack, and then it'll come a point where actually he needs to attack and they'll look much better. But it's hard to see this United team doing anything good, as far as I can see it at the moment, until Matic and Lukaku come out, because they seem to be the two, aside from the intention, the way they go out to play, and actual players not playing that well. Like Martial had a stinker last night. I mean, it didn't matter. That wasn't to do with the way that United was set up. He just had a bad game. But until the Matic comes out and you've got someone who can take the ball off the back four and pass it quickly and recover it quickly, and until you've got a centre forward of whom the ball doesn't bounce, who is able to make his own goals, score goals out of nothing, if he gets one chance, stick it away, then you're gonna continue to have problems, I think, because Lukaku is not playing well himself, nor is he elevating the roles of the players around him. So he's making the team worse, and that is a big problem.
One last question for me on this. I haven't seen every single Man United game this season, but is Juan Mata somebody who you would expect Jose Mourinho to turn to for a game of this magnitude? Like, why did he pick Mata last night?
I think he picked Mata because he sort of felt like he didn't have any options but to pick him against Chelsea, and he played well. The problem for me wasn't so much that he picked Mata, although I wouldn't have done. It was having Mata and Matic. If he'd have played Fred or Herrera instead of Matic, then at least he'd have had some legs in midfield, so that you might have been able to carry someone who really looks like a toddler playing with his dad's mates at that. But it's hard to see why he plays Mata going forward, because Mata's a luxury player, and he's a luxury player in a team that's not really challenging for titles. He's that kind of player. If all the other elements of your team are working properly, then you can have a number 10. But the problem with a number 10, if you play Mata there, is that when he plays in the middle, and the reason why Van Gaal moved him over to the wing is because physically he gets crowded out and run out of it in midfield, because it gets crowded in there and he is small and slow. But then if you have a perfectly functioning team, you can get away with a number 10 like Mata. But the problem with United is they've also got Pogba. And I mean, Jamie Carragher's been saying this for a long time, you can't really have Pogba in a number 10. Now, I'm not actually sure that that's the case, because for me, the best... Sorry, did I just say for me there? I think I did. Apologies. Anyway, the best way of getting the most out of this United team is actually to play it in a diamond, because they don't have any wingers. So if you play the diamond, then you'd be able to get the 3 in midfield that you needed to be able to compete. You could also have a number 10, and you could also have 2 centre forwards. And United don't have someone who is a reliable goal scorer. They have Lukaku, who score a lot of goals, but not necessarily when you want them. So you have 2 strikers, and that's where United's strength is. They've got good strikers. And then you can have the overload in midfield if you need it. And they're relying anyway on the fullbacks to provide the width, because they don't have any wingers. So in that formation, you could have Pogba and a number 10.
Okay, so Pogba would be at the base of the diamond or on the left-hand side. Who's
Pogba, I would have Fred at the base of the diamond, or Herrera, because both of them can pass the ball.
Okay, and who? So name the team out there. Name that diamond.
So I'd have Fred on the left, then Fred at the base, Pogba on the left. Then depending on the opposition, I guess you'd either have Lingard or Herrera on the right, and then at the tip, you'd have Lingard or Sanchez. And then up front, you could perm. I guess at the moment, I'd probably go Rashford and Martial and have Sanchez behind them. And then at least it's like, we'll get out of the way of that, because you've got enough midfielders to try and get enough possession of the ball to do something. And you've got 2 strikers who are... I am certain that Chiellini and Bonucci would rather play against Lukaku than play against Rashford and Martial. And the thing is that Rashford and Martial were basically on the touchline last night. And if they're keeping the width, then you need someone coming from midfield to help Lukaku, because otherwise he's going to be on his own and he's going to need some help, particularly given the standard of his touch, and someone to catch the bounce off, basically.
Fair enough.
Jose Mourinho was speaking about transfers again last night, speaking how Juventus, in terms of being top-level challengers in Europe, have identified areas of their squad where they were weak, and they went out and they signed the best available talents. And I don't know, maybe I'm just being ground down by Jose Mourinho talking about his lack of available options at that level of quality in his squad, but I'm starting to believe him a little bit now. The thing is, Manchester United are 10th in the Premier League, and they should not be 10th in the Premier League, that they are nowhere near challenging for European titles. But there is a little bit of truth in the idea that Juventus have just kind of listened to the manager and said, yeah, we'll get that, whereas at Manchester United it's been a very different story.
Yeah, I mean, as usually with Mourinho, there's some elements of truth in what he says, but he obviously doesn't examine the elements of truth that are on him. So you could say that he hasn't been given the money that all these other guys have got. So yeah, Juventus went and signed Ronaldo, and he's got his centre-backs are both cost 30 million quid. And I mean, on BT Sport last night, Rio Ferdinand was saying, but he's got these centre-backs, they cost this amount of money. And it's like, well, you're thinking, well, actually, Rio, they cost the same as what you cost nearly 20 years ago. So they were punts. Now, whether Mourinho would have been allowed to spend the Lindelof and the Bailly money on one centre-back who was better, I don't know. So maybe that is Mourinho's fault, but that would certainly have been a better approach looking at it now. Although Lindelof was excellent last night. That was by far his best game for United. But you can say he hasn't had the money, and he hasn't. So if you look at City's defence, they've got a £50 million player in each defensive position. So United haven't had that. But at the same time, Mourinho went and spent 50 million quid on Fred, who can't get in the team. So he spent whatever he spent on Sanchez's wages, and he can't get a tune out of him either. So there's fault on both sides. The board didn't back Mourinho in the summer, and if they weren't going to back him, they should have fired him. But at the same time, his use of the money that he's had has not been that good. I mean, he's spent a lot of money on Pogba, who has been good here and there, but again, capable of much more. He spent a lot of money on Lukaku, who again, good here and there. Not sure if he's capable of much more. Didn't think he was the right player at the time. Don't think he was the right player now. Spent a lot of money on Matic. Was pretty sure at the time he wasn't the right player. Doesn't look like the right player. So Mourinho's record in the transfer market is not good. But at the same time, if United want to compete with the clubs that they want to compete with, the best clubs, then it's also true that he's not being supported and backed in the way that their managers are.
Just one last one for me, Daniel. Just going back to your initial point about a lack of nasty bastards, I think, in Pep Guardiola's side. If you had all the money in the world and you could sign a nasty bastard, as you say, who is that number one person? Who is the nastiest bastard, I guess, is the question I'm trying to ask.
The nastiest bastard in football? Well, how long have we got? Are we talking only on-pitch behaviour?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. The nastiest bastard in football. I mean, De Rossi would be one. He springs to mind. There aren't that many of them in the game at the moment. Really. I mean,
Sergio Ramos. If you're City,
of course, yeah. I mean, yeah. Sergio Ramos is high level. I guess probably him.
I think he's available. I think if you're Man City or Man United or even PSG, there's just this little window here where Sergio Ramos is like, he's done literally everything he's possibly ever going to do with Real Madrid. He must be available for like whatever the money. You could play Sergio Ramos in any of those teams for the next 4 or 5 seasons. He could reach nearly 40 and he would still be a nasty bastard who would... Did you see what he did at training? He kicked the head off some kids in training 2 days ago. So some guy runs past him. Sergio doesn't like it. He gets the ball and he kicks it from me to you off the kid's head, and it's like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. I mean, it happens all the time, obviously.
Sounds like you're projecting there.
A little bit, good spot. But definitely, I would sign him in a heartbeat.
Also, the video of Raheem Sterling potentially diving as well was a low blow. Yeah, like I don't think you can get past Sergio Ramos, to be honest. I think that's probably the answer there. Stupid question, really, for me. Sergio Ramos.
Yeah, he is extremely dastardly, and I mean, that's what most good teams have players like that. Not as many as they used to, but the majority of the best teams will have at least one player like that, and often more. The best teams that I can think of have all had several.
We might get your top 5 list of the 90s bastards next time we have you on, Daniel. Thanks a million.
Okay, cool.
We'll talk to you real soon. It's Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts on Manchester United's defeat last night. It's funny how we're not talking about Mourinho being sacked after the defeat. Like that noise has disappeared.
Yeah, that's true.
The imminence of the sacking has disappeared.
Has it? The talk around it has. I don't think the imminence has. I think the imminence is very much there again. It was like the exceptional performance after they went a goal down and 2 goals down in Newcastle's case were a stopgap, basically. And you would still be surprised if he wasn't sacked this side of Christmas.
I kind of would be now.